This is Jonathan Ginsberg, and today I'd like to talk to you about the difference between Chapter 7 and Chapter 13. Now, both Chapter 7 and Chapter 13 are forms of bankruptcy. The Bankruptcy Code contains various chapters or sections, and Chapter 7 and Chapter 13 are the consumer bankruptcy sections. There's also something out there called Chapter 11, which works for a large business organization or an extremely complex individual case. There's Chapter 9, which can be for a municipality. There's Chapter 12 for family farmers, but basically for individuals, Chapter 7 and Chapter 13 are really your main options. And here's the difference. Chapter 7 works best if you have a lot of unsecured debt. And by unsecured debt, I mean credit card debt, medical bills, personal loans, repossession deficiencies, unsecured debts, things that there's no property that secures it, simply signature type of debt. And if you're successful with Chapter 7, that unsecured debt just disappears. And it works best also if you don't own a lot of stuff, because in Chapter 7, the thought is that you give up any property that is not otherwise sheltered or exempt to the trustee in exchange for wiping out your debt. Most of the time when I file a Chapter 7 for somebody, that client doesn't own very much, so there's really nothing to give up, and in every case, nobody loses anything. So that's what Chapter 7 is, and again, it works best if you don't own a lot of stuff, if you have a lot of unsecured debt, or if you just want to start over and give things up. Chapter 13, by contrast, works best if you have secured debt that you're behind on that you want to keep. Chapter 13 was originally called the Wage Earner Plan. It was designed for people who were working and earning a steady paycheck. They had enough money to pay their monthly expenses, but they had fallen behind on a mortgage payment or a car payment and needed bankruptcy protection to sort of stretch out those payments and pay that debt back over time. So Chapter 13 works best if you're facing a mortgage foreclosure, if you're facing a vehicle repossession, or if you have unsecured debt, or secured debt rather, where the payments are just too high and you need to restructure and pay back over time, because Chapter 13 is going to last usually 5 years. And so you take a little bit of your income, your disposable income, whether that's $500 a month, $1,000 a month, $300 a month, whatever it may be, you pay that to the Chapter 13 trustee. The trustee then pays your creditors back over time. You get your discharge, and again, you're debt-free. Chapter 13 also allows for treatment of unsecured debt, like credit cards and so forth, and usually you pay those back at some percentage on the dollar. Sometimes you pay it back at 100 cents on the dollar, sometimes you pay it back at 1 or 2 cents on the dollar. It just depends on a number of calculations having to do with how much stuff you have and whether we can shelter it. It also has to do with the means test. But big picture, Chapter 13 works best to stop a foreclosure. That's what I usually put people in Chapter 13 for. Stop repossession and keep a vehicle. You want to keep your stuff. Chapter 7 works best if you have a lot of unsecured debt you want to get rid of. Obviously, that's an oversimplification, but I wanted you to get the big picture, and feel free to call me to discuss further or fill out the form on this website page, and I'll be happy to explain to you more about how Chapter 7 and Chapter 13 work. So I hope that's been helpful, and again, this is Jonathan Ginsberg.